it's Dr. Brooks. Today we are going to do a video on the ARD process. For those of you that are confused by that, we have been getting lots of calls from our parents, and when we talk to them about like behavioral issues and things that they're having going on at school, many of you really don't know what to do or what your rights are, which I think are really important. So I'm going to go through what an ARD is, just really kind of just reading you some things, and then we're going to interview one of our parents. She has a child with autism that's 7, and I'm going to ask her a couple questions, and then if there's anything that we left out or anything that you have questions about, feel free to call the office and ask. We're also going to be doing at least 1 or 2 follow-up videos to this, so if there's specific questions that you have, if you can leave them down underneath the video so we can answer them in the follow-up video, that would be great. Okay, so the first thing to know about an ARD is it's an admission, review, and dismissal. That's what it stands for. It's a meeting where the teachers and the support staff bring their expertise on education and their experience with your child to a meeting. And what gets talked about is the needs of your child, the abilities that they have, where they're at, the desires of the teachers, and their expectations. And then together in that meeting, the IEP is written, which is the Individualized Education Program. And we're going to be doing a follow-up video on that because that's a whole nother thing. So common reasons that we, when I say we, I'm just talking about parents in general, common reasons that an ARD meeting is approved is to get special education services. So this could be your child starting at a new school, or they're starting school, they just got diagnosed, or they've had new assessments done. They're new to the district because you can't transfer things to different districts. An annual review happens, so every year you're going to have one of these meetings. If your teacher is asking for a change in the IEP, you have an ARD meeting, or if the parent is requesting changes, then you have an ARD meeting. If they're transitioning from academic to life skills, you have to have an ARD meeting, and then transitioning out of special education services. Also behavior challenges. This is the one that I think parents often don't know about. If you're having struggles at school, and you know it's the school environment because at home they don't do that, et cetera, which I hear all the time, then that would be a reason to have an ARD meeting. And that's usually not something that gets told to parents, and often something that the child isn't getting their needs met at school because they didn't know their right to ask for an ARD and get those accommodations made. So, and then of course, you'll have an ARD meeting if they aren't making progress in their IEP goals, or if the original plan is not working. So, I want to kind of give you guys a little bit about what you need to do before you have the meeting, right? You have a chance and a right to ask any questions that you don't understand during the meeting. They're going to use lots of language, education language, and things that I wouldn't expect any parent to understand, things that if I sat there, I wouldn't understand. So if at any point you don't understand anything, you need to take time out. You need to ask them, what does that mean? Now is not the time to have pride in you should know what that means, because you shouldn't know what anything means. This is not your job. Your job is to be a parent and to be sitting there as an advocate for your child. So if there is something you do not understand, I need you to go ahead and say, okay, time out. Can you explain to me what that is, right? Bring a paper, bring a pen, make sure that you're writing notes, because I think any of us in a stressful environment tend to forget what happens during the meeting. I don't think it would be a bad idea to record the meeting on your phone. I wouldn't ask for permission. That's just me. I would just go ahead and record it, and that way you can go back and listen to what they said and what they did. I think bringing someone with you is a great idea too, because 2 sets of ears is always better than 1. So write down anything that you've noticed about your child's academics or their functional needs that you feel maybe are not being met at school. But functionality could cover a lot of things. For me, I give my parents a list of all the things, milestones we're working on, like holding a pencil in writing position, social skills, being able to count, all these things. So often I will tell parents, bring this to your ARD meeting or your OT or your ST or whatever, right? This would be another appropriate place to bring those lists to. Hopefully your physician has given you those milestones, or you've had an evaluation by an occupational therapist where you've got a list of things that have yet to be met and that need to be worked on. That'd be a great time to share that information at your ARD. Request any new additions to your child's school record, special diets, things that need to be taken at school, things that need to be avoided at school, things that you've noticed that help. Those would be good things to bring. Get copies of any evaluation reports. Like I said, make sure you're bringing them copies. Do not bring your originals to the meeting and leave them. You won't get them back. So bring copies of everything. Any new medical documentation for the behaviors that you see, get a letter from the doctor stating, I believe this child needs to be blah, blah, blah. They're under my care, blah, blah, blah. That comes from your doctor. Bring those notes to the meeting as well. And then I would talk to your teacher in advance, the special education director, about any updates or concerns that you may have before you go in. That meeting is not the time to bring up new things. It's a time for the teachers and special ed staff know what your concerns are, you know what their concerns are. This is the meeting to come together and make decisions. This is not the meeting to be like, oh, and by the way, there's this new thing that they're doing, right? Maybe new documentation, letters that you've gotten to prepare for the ARD, that's perfectly fine. But do not bring up brand new things. Make sure you kind of squash those and that you at least let the teachers and staff know ahead of time that these are the things I'm expecting to talk about during this meeting so that they're prepared, so that this doesn't drag out, right? Who's going to be at the ARD meeting? You, obviously, as the parent, your child, beginning at the age of 18, have to attend. So, but you're always notified and they may attend if they're invited. And if you feel like they're ready, that they can be there. Your child's a special education teacher, your child's regular education teacher, and at least one school district representative. And then anyone else that you invite. So family members, any therapists sometimes. And I know parents have also hired advocates. They're third-party people that can come in. They can be assigned to you, and I think we'll ask the mom that we're going to talk to in a little while about maybe how to go about doing that. Because I think a lot of times you don't know your district's policies because every district's different. You could be in Plano and still have a different district and then have different rules. And as we know, a lot of this is just red tape and politics, right? So sometimes it helps to have somebody that can get you through the red tape and the politics. What you should expect, some are short, some are long. And so I'll ask the mom, Patricia, about this as well. But the committee is basically going to decide if your child has a disability and an educational need. And if it's appropriate on the list of disabilities and they qualify, this could be intellectual disability, physical disability, behavioral issues, then all their education needs are considered in developing the IEP. And the IEP is what they have to follow. So they'll look at the latest academic measures of your child, however that can be looked at or monitored, performance in the classroom, behavior, all that fun stuff comes into account at this time. So then they will decide on accommodations, like I said. At the end of the meeting, you should be very clear about what the goals are. So make sure that you are. They'll recommend every part of basically how the school day is supposed to play out. So physical accommodations, like I said, whether they're tracking homework, transportation, maybe recommendations for where to sit in the classroom, behavior modifications, specifically what to do when, all these things, the more detailed, the better, right? Because the more detailed, the more accountability. So if there's something that seems a little wishy-washy to you, then make sure you make it that much more succinct. The more succinct it is, the more detailed it is, the better of a result we're going to get. Once the ARD meeting is done, the IEP is created, it's passed around for everyone to sign. When you sign, you can say whether you agree or disagree. You don't have to agree with it. If you're comfortable with it and you think it's a good plan, then you sign and you agree. If you disagree with some or all the decisions that the committee is making, you can write down what areas you disagree with and note that on the document. You can also ask for another meeting to further discuss the areas. You also don't have to sign it. So I'm telling you all this so that you know your rights and you know what you can and cannot do. You can have more time to sign it if you want. You can ask for another meeting to discuss it. And if you feel like, look, this definitely is not an appropriate IEP for my child, Then we kind of go into what's called a special ARD and special considerations, and this is where we get a facilitated IEP. So this is when I was talking to you about like a third party person. They're trained, they're kind of the middle person, but they're really an advocate. But they are trained in what the ARD process is and how to facilitate coming up with an agreement between both parties. So that would be how you sort of settle the disagreement from there. So that's all I'm going to say. I think we're going to ask the mom a couple questions, and then that'll be it. So I want to introduce Patricia. She's going to come on in and join us. Patricia's son is 7. His name is Axel, and he has autism. And Patricia's been through the ringer with all this fun stuff. So thanks for joining us. Yeah.
Hi, Dr.
So
Brooks.
hi.
Hi, everybody.
So scoot in a little bit so you can see,
Okay.
everyone can see us.
Okay.
Tell me what, like in your experience with an ARD, how long like is the meeting?
Well, an ARD meeting can go anywhere from a couple hours to a couple days. It really depends.
So do they just like extend it? Like we're gonna meet tomorrow at this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's if you can't come to an agreement with the school
Mm-hmm.
and you don't agree, or they're saying we need to do this and you're like, I don't think so, then it does prolong.
Okay.
So it can be, okay, we're going to break for today because teachers do have to go back to teaching,
Okay.
and then we'll start again tomorrow.
Okay. Now where does this take place?
Usually in the school.
At the school your child goes to?
At the school
Okay.
your child goes to, they
Okay.
usually designate like a classroom or a portable that you can meet and everybody's there.
Okay. What, aside from the things that I talked about, what should they be prepared for that day?
Honestly, you talked about getting somebody else to go with you,
Mm-hmm.
and I do want to stress the importance of that because it's very intimidating. Nobody tells you how intimidating that meeting's going to be, because it's you as a parent
Yeah.
who doesn't know any school lingo,
Right.
and then it's everybody who went to school and knows the school lingo,
Mm-hmm.
and they're professionals. So I do want to stress the factor of take somebody else, even if they don't know or have anything to add for your child. Emotionally, support is very important.
Okay.
So take somebody else just to be with you and to show that support emotionally, verbally.
Okay.
And-
I have another question too. So once you have the ARD meeting and then you have an IEP, when do they reassess? Is that different for everybody, or is there like a...
No, it should be once a year, in the beginning of the year, and
So
then
wait.
at the end of the year.
beginning of the school year, end of the school year?
Beginning of the school year to see kind of if you're barely going into it and you're new and your child's barely starting school, in the beginning.
But as a parent, how do you know the things that were agreed to are being done?
That's a tricky question. The reason...
I mean, twice a year? That doesn't seem like enough.
You need to really keep up with your teacher.
Okay.
You need to really... The communication needs to be there.
Okay.
You can't just expect... Yes, they are the experts, and yes, they know what they're doing, but at the end of the day, you know your
Okay,
child.
so parents should be checking in.
All the time.
Okay, great.
All the time.
Great. Now with email, I know they email and harass you, so guess what? You get to email and harass them. Perfect. I love
Yeah.
it. What do you feel is most beneficial about having an ARD, like maybe Axel pre having an ARD and IEP and post ARD and IEP?
The accommodations and the progress that is made.
Okay.
If they actually do what they need to do.
Okay.
And that varies by districts.
Right.
So
And by child. I mean,
and by
not
child.
everyone's...
But as long as they're doing what they need to do, and you see progress, we're on track. But
Mhm.
if you don't see progress, that's when you're like, what's going on? It's been 3 months. My child is still struggling with the same thing. What's going on?
So there's something that happened last summer in Axel's case, and they wanted to keep him, they kept wanting to put him in a social skills,
And a
Right?
communications.
communications class.
Yeah, communications class.
So for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, or that you're like, what? Basically, it's like babysitting. Academically, they're learning nothing. And they're usually in a room with a bunch of other children that are, in many cases, either the same level of functioning or lower functioning. And so part of the fear is, are they learning anything? And then what kind of bad behaviors are they going to pick up? And you don't necessarily get to, I think Patricia did go visit the classroom.
I did, yeah.
And she did talk to the teacher, but she kept fighting them, and she would not agree to transferring him, because I was pushing her to push him into regular ed, which he is in now.
Yeah, he's in a resource room, and then the other part, he's in general ed.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a split, and I think that's the way, if you feel like your child can handle it, that's, I think, the way to kind of, you divide it out, really, right? And then they have that IEP and accommodation so that if he's having a bad day or a sensory day or whatever, they sort of know what to do. Because the kids on the spectrum are very, very smart, and we have to keep them engaged.
Correct.
And they have to keep learning. And there's parts of Axel that are way more advanced than his classmates in math specifically. And then other parts that he's at level and below level, but I think that goes across the board for all the kiddos. But if he was in a resource room,
Which he is.
Full-time, or the other one from last year, if he would have been there full-time, I don't know that they would have ever even known what his academic abilities were.
Yeah.
Because they don't do those tests to see, or push them, really.
And that's kind of one of the things that his teacher now, who's wonderful, says. Axel academically is very smart. So we don't know where he would be if he would have gone to the communications room.
Yeah, that was my fear. But I mean, I can't make that call for any of you out there because I don't know your kids, and they're not under care with me, and so I don't know where they're starting and where they've gone. But it's nice for parents to have feedback, whether it's from their physician or their occupational or speech therapist on, no, I think that they are capable. You need to give them a chance. Try to listen to those people because they're seeing your child through a different set of eyes, right? And so anyway, I think that's really all we have for you guys. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any specific questions that we haven't answered, leave them down below, and then we'll go ahead and pick up and answer those. If you're dying to know the answer, you can always call the office and ask us too. Hopefully we'll have an answer for you. So we appreciate your time. See you later. Bye.
Bye.